Good evening, respected Professor Bal Ganpati Devakonda sir, all the dignitaries, my colleagues, and all my dear students. On this beautiful evening, I, Shivani Mesawat, extend a warm and hearty welcome to all on behalf of Prerna College on the fourth day of online certificate course in life skill and their practical applications. It is organized by our extracurricular activity committee. I am sure that all the participants will enjoy learning all the session in this 14 days with various eminent speakers. Today we have an eminent speaker, Professor Bal Ganpati Devrakonda sir, with us. He will share his views on the topic of interpersonal skills understanding others. Now, let me have the privilege to welcome and introduce the remarkable personality and our special guest for today's certificate course in life skill and their practical application. So, presently, Sir holds the position of Professor of Philosophy at the University of Delhi. He is presently with the Department of Language, Linguistics and Philosophy, University of West Indies, Kingston, Jamaica as ICCR Chair for Indology. Sir is certified philosophical counselor by American Philosophy Practitioners Association in New York. He is one of the founding directors of the Philosophical Practitioners Association of India, a non-profit organization established for promotion of philosophical practice in India. He is a project fellow of Great Transition in India, a Korean perspective on Indian studies by Institution of Indian Studies of Hankook University of Foreign Studies in South Korea. He is working on a project titled Yoga Consciousness in Mahabharata, the ethical value for social political well-being, and has completed a major funding research project ICSSR Culture through the Labyrinth of Globalization. He is serving as the regional coordinator of Council for Research in Values and Philosophy in Washington, D.C. He has been associated with the editorial boards of various journals such as Journal of Human Values and Journal of Foundational Research. Sir is presently a member of Academic Committee of Indian Institution of Advanced Study in Shimla. He was the Chancellor's nominee for the Board of Management of Mohanlal Sukhadia University, Udaipur, and a member of Research Project Committee of the Indian Council of Philosophical Research in New Delhi. It is really an honor to have such a vibrant personality with us today, and I'm sure everybody is excited to listen our today's distinguished guest. So, I request sir to please enlighten us with your talk. Over to you, sir.
Sir, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Praveen Joshi ji. Namaste. Namaste.
Namaskar, namaskar. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
Early in the morning,
So,
you got up and you have joined us.
yeah,
It's 8:30 there now.
it is 8:30, so that's comfortable time.
Yeah, right. I'm sure it will be great pleasure listening to you. Your profile is very rich and it has inspired us a lot.
Thank you.
Please,
Thank you
please.
so much. Thanks for this kind. Yeah, sure. Namaste to all of you. Dr. Praveen Joshi ji, Director of Prerna College of Commerce, and other friends, other organizing committee members, like people who were in continuous touch with me is Ms. Neha, IQAC coordinator, and I also see that Dr. Lalither and Afsha Khan, Ms. Afsha Khan are also part of this organizing committee. and this a wonderful course, certificate course on life skills and their practical applications that Prerna College of Commerce is organizing as a part of its extracurricular activities committee's work. And I'm happy that so many people have joined for this course, opted for this course, thinking that it is going to really change their lives and make a positive contribution to the life. So I'm sure you already had a couple of sessions, at least 3 or 4 sessions with other eminent speakers. I'm sure you have a lot to take back home, thinking of its improvement, how it's going to affect your life in a practical way. I assume that the people who are among the audience, or like the people from the college itself, and also general audience from outside, right? Is this what I can assume, right? There are people who are from outside the college as well, who are part of this course. Is that what I can assume? Yeah, let me go ahead with that. No, that's wonderful. Actually, I was just thinking, if at all we are talking about life skills, if they are not applicable in their or in our own practical life, can they be called life skills? No. So life skill, the very practical, little away from life itself, and we have to learn them by hard work. This is what we assume. But I'm glad that this college has chosen a right theme for this certificate course, saying that trying to bring it back into our mind that it is not away from life, but it is very the essence of the practical application within human life. So I'm glad about that. And the theme that is given to me is developing interpersonal skills and understanding others. So this is a broader area, and it looks very exciting and interesting to me as well when I got this theme, because I've been practicing philosophical counseling since last 4 or 5 years, and we argue that philosophy is something that we actually practice in our life. And philosophical practice is something that is very human to the individuals, right? If that is the case, the interpersonal skills that we are talking about and understanding the other are very much integral to the individual's own self-essence. So that's where I begin my talk. I understand that some of you may not try to profess as though I have something more to add to your knowledge and experience. I understand that you can contribute to this certificate course. Let me proceed. Right. With this, I was trying to look at like how do I structure my talk. When I was thinking of dealing with it, I would begin something like, what is a skill? Because I understand that other friends, who the previous speakers might have already spoken about this particular aspect, what is a skill, and they might have delved into it better than what I can do. But still, in order to prepare platform for what I want to say further, let me begin with what is a skill, and then I would also talk about why and how interpersonal skills. Okay, and I will also in the third part of it, I will get into something like skill and interpersonal. These two, how do these two involve the other? Okay, is it that the other is an opposite of them, or is it I would discuss why understand the other, why should we understand the other? Okay, so this is how I have structured my talk. And as a part of this talk, that we have, which I would be dealing with, I don't know how you receive these conceptions. Probably I believe that these are all commonly accepted beliefs. Okay, so number one is the skill. The concept of skill is a modern Western concept. Okay, this is how some of our friends and some of us believe that the concept called skill is a Western concept, and specifically, it is a modern Western concept as we understand it today. The other important point that I would address in my talk is how are these two related? Because when we talk about interpersonal relations, interpersonal, how is it related to intrapersonal, right? How are these two inter and intra related to each other? Are they opposites? How do we look at them? How do we understand them? Whether there is any common ground which really tries to help us, or which really asks us to look into it. So that is what I would be dealing with this particular aspect, like inter and intra. How are they related? Okay, are they opposites? In general, it is told to all of us that these are opposites. Okay, so I always try to mark my discipline. Discipline is philosophy. I always try to market my impact is the peak. So that's how people argue. People often think that philosophy has nothing to do with this interpersonal or intrapersonal understanding, because it is all like modern management concept, and philosophy cannot offer anything to this. So this is another misconception or general conception that most of us may have. I would be addressing that as well. And along with that, last point that I would be dealing with in this talk is other can be understood only through the external behavior of the other. Okay, this is what we accept, in general, in the behavioral sciences, including management sciences, we understand that how do I understand the other? I can understand the other only in terms of the so I would make a plea to all of you to have a better understanding of these four aspects that I have mentioned. Okay, so this is what I would be doing it in the talk that I am developing now. Let me begin with the first one. I said I would be dealing with the first one, like what is a skill, and I'm sure it is dealt with more profound knowledge and understanding by my previous speakers. But still, let me go a little bit into it so that, as I said, it prepares a ground for me to talk about whatever I'm going to do further. Okay, so what is a skill? People told us that it is the ability. Okay, and whenever they talked about the ability, they also told us that skill is something more than or other than you have knowledge and you have skill. So knowledge basically provides you it makes you know, but skill makes you do, right? This is the difference. To know and to do are two different ones. Are they different? Just think. Okay, because sometimes we know something but we don't do it. Right? For example, I'll tell you, people told us not to tell lies. Okay, you know that lying is wrong, but that knowledge, okay, knowledge of not lying, okay, lying is not good, will not lead you necessarily lead you to behave a lot, in consonance with that. We tend to basically lie often in our lives, right? So knowledge doesn't necessarily lead us to do it, right? But here, when we are
Some
talking
people
about
develop,
skill,
some
we
people
are
develop the skill of lying,
talking
how to
about
lie.
knowledge that leads to a successful activity. Sorry,
I said, we know very well, we have the knowledge that we should not lie, but some people develop the
your voice
skill
is
of
breaking. I
lying.
couldn't do what you said.
So for some people, lying is a skill, I said.
Yes, yes. You develop the skill of telling the truth, but you can always develop the skill of lying. Because definitely. Okay. See, cutting the wrist and ill, and basically cutting the killing the people with knife is also a skill. So skill is not necessarily positive alone. It can be negative one as well. Yeah, you said it rightly. I agree with you. You have the knowledge, and you think that if I know the knowledge, if I know something, then I would put it in practice. For example, you have fire, and when you touch it, you know that touching the fire would burn your hand, so you don't touch it, right? You have the knowledge that fire burns, and you don't touch it, right? So, but the knowledge of positive things in your life, you don't put them in action. Knowledge with regard to the negative things, you try to put them in action. That's a kind of a human psychology. Probably we have to explore further into that. Okay, which prompts knowledge prompts your parents told you, asked you to repeat certain kind of actions that you have performed. So this is how they learn, even when education limits.
Apsha, I suppose there is some problem.
Yes, sir. Uh,
It is not from our end, it is from his end, I suppose.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now he is not audible.
He is not audible, and sir, his call is not connected that time. We have to wait, I think.
Hmm.
Am I audible?
Now
Yes,
you
sir.
are
Yes,
audible.
sir.
Audible. In between, there was some
Right,
problem.
right,
He is
great.
not audible.
Yeah, there is some network issues here, I believe.
Yeah, of course, of course. You please go ahead. Students, please wait. There is some network issue. I think immediately he will join us. Please don't leave. Don't be in a hurry to leave. In online sessions, this is common. So we have to wait, we have to keep patience. आप लोग छोड़ के मत जाइए, वेट कीजिए. बहुत अच्छा टॉक है ये, और ये आपके लिए बहुत उपयोगी है. इंटरपर्सनल रिलेशनशिप एंड अंडरस्टैंडिंग अदर्स, जो हम अपने लाइफ में कभी करते नहीं है. हम केवल अपने आप को ही समझते हैं, दूसरों को कभी नहीं समझते. तो दूसरों को समझना ये भी एक कला होती है, जिसके ऊपर आज का टॉक है. और सर बहुत अच्छा समझा रहा है आपको कि नॉलेज क्या होता है और स्किल क्या होता है. ये हमारे जीवन में बहुत ही उपयुक्त ऐसा टॉपिक है, जिससे हम दूसरों को अच्छे से समझने की कोशिश करेंगे और समझेंगे. अब से कांटेक्ट करने की कोशिश तो करो उनको.
Yes, sir, I will try.
उनको व्हाट्सएप पर ही कॉल करना पड़ेगा, तुम्हारा वैसे कॉल लगेगा नहीं.
जी सर.
व्हाट्सएप का जो नंबर है ना उनका.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
हम्म. Now is visible. You are visible.
I'm sorry, I
No,
don't
no,
know
it's
why it is happening today, because I've been giving talks every week, every day, but this is a strange thing that is happening today. I'm sorry for this.
sometimes it
Yeah,
happens.
let me
Sometimes it happens.
let me go quickly and try to make my point so that you also don't get lost in my absence. Yeah, what I was trying to stress is, basically there are different kind of we have a wide variety of people here around us from different states of India. This is what I assume, right? Which means people from different languages, people who speak different languages. If that is the case, I just want you to think and write it in the chat box. What is the word that you have for skill in your own language? Okay. Please write what is the word that you have that you can think of uh, uh, for skill in your language. Please write that. Okay. So that would be really helpful for me and for all of us as well. Okay, what is the word that you have in your language for skill? The common word. Let me go further. Please keep writing. We'll look at that later on. But I want you to respond to this. Okay. When we the common word that we have in Indian tradition for skill is kausalya. Okay. Kausalya means the skill, right? And it is not, I'm saying this because it is not something that is, the skill is not something that is aligned to classical Indian tradition. I always advocate classical Indian tradition. I try to look at classical Indian tradition and try to bring out something that would be useful to all of us. Okay. So as a part of it, I was trying to look at how do they understand, how did they understand skill in our classical Indian tradition. Interestingly, the word Kausalya or Kusalata or Kausalya, okay, these are the words that are used in Sanskrit tradition for skill. Have you heard about yoga? Yoga is quite popular in India, right? All of us practice yoga. You know how Bhagavad Gita explains yoga? It says, Yogaha karmasu kausalam. Okay. So the skill is stressed and explained as yoga. Okay. So the very definition of yoga involves skill. This is what I want you to recognize, right? He says, yoga is, Bhagavan Krishna says, yoga is skillfulness in action, not just skillfulness in thinking, not just skillfulness in talking, but skillfulness in action. Okay? So he says basically, buddhi yukto jahatiha ubhe sukruta dushkrute tasmad yogaya yujyasva karmasu yogaha karmasu kausalam. This is what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, where he tries to stress that yoga is skillfulness in action. So how is this yoga and skillfulness in action come together? Yoga, basically, you understand that it is yuj, which comes from yuj dhatu, which means coming together. So where do you find two things coming together and become one? That happens in skill. See, for example, somebody who is an um, um, expert in dealing with a car, okay, a car mechanic, okay, this person skilled in repairing a car. You don't have to tell him. He has the knowledge and he has the skill, and he would be talking to you and doing the work. Okay, so he would do it in such a expert way, skillful way, that you don't see the knowledge and skill putting it in action to be different in him. It happens sequentially, one after the other. He would be doing it with such a skill, with such minute details, in a perfect way. Okay, so you find yoga, which means coming together and becoming one in a skillful action. That is how yoga is explained as a skillful action. And you all of us, you think about your skillfulness in something and see whether you can differentiate yourself from the action that you are doing when you are skillful in something. For example, somebody plays a musical instrument. So is it that the knowledge and the playing of the no putting it in action are different? No, you cannot differentiate them, and it happens like it is not that he has to. If somebody is playing flute, it is not that he has to press the one hole and the other hole. No, it doesn't happen that way. It just flows. So that is what is skillfulness in action that Sri Krishna talks about. So I'm just saying this to tell you that skill is very much integral, and in fact it is explained in terms of yoga itself. Okay, which means it is at the very heart of the classical Indian tradition. I'll give you another example with regard to this skill, and then I'll move forward. Another example that we find is from Buddhism. Okay, Bhagavan Buddha talks about upaya kausalya. Okay, this is a very important skill, the very important concept in Buddhism. He says one has to have skillfulness in thought, skillfulness in ideas. Only then one can avoid the suffering that he comes across, and one can help the others in overcoming the suffering. Because for Buddha, he sees world to be full of suffering, and he tries to give us the way of avoiding the suffering that is around us. And he says, Upaya Kausalya, skillfulness in ideas, is something that is required. And that is how the concept of Bodhisattva, I don't know whether some of you might have heard about this concept of Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva takes different births to help others to get liberated. Okay, so what comes out in the concept of Bodhisattva is Upaya Kausalya. Okay, even here, what is being stressed is skillfulness in ideas. Okay, because now in the modern context, we talk about skillfulness in the management sciences, right? So is it different from what Krishna has told us in terms of yoga karmasu kausalam? Do you think that it's different from what Buddha has told us with regard to Upaya Kausalya? No. What I am trying to stress here by citing these two instances is that when we are looking at these concepts, it would be better for us if we go into our classical Indian tradition and take out the resources from there and try to use it for our purposes, the modern Western contextual purposes, it would be more useful for us, because West only limits itself with the modernity, modern development of science. But India is one country which has its own huge traditional classical resources, which can really help the individuals. When I'm saying this, what I also mean is I work on artificial intelligence. Okay. So though I am into philosophy, I also work on artificial intelligence, and I'm having a discussion with the best experts of artificial intelligence in the world. And I'm told that when they are looking at artificial intelligence, they have come to a stage where things seem to be stalemate. Okay. Because we have developed artificial organs, artificial limbs, and artificial knowledge system and virtual knowledge system, etc. But they want to create something called artificial self. So how do you create something called artificial self? They reached a stalemate and they are not able to go further. And interestingly, it is stated that Buddhism, the way it explains the self, is one of the rich resources now people are looking at, trying to construct something called artificial self, which means West, okay, the modern Western scientists are also recognizing the importance of the classical Indian resources, and we should also do that for our own purposes. Anyway, let me go further on this. So basically, my point is to stress that when we are talking about skill, we have rich resources within Indian tradition. So don't think that it is a modern Western concept and you have to go with that. Now, the second point that I want to make, which I have already stated, is that how is it related to philosophy, right? Somebody may ask, like, why are you putting it in philosophy? In general, philosophy, people have a huge misunderstanding regarding philosophy. Some people think that philosophy means it's only religion. No, philosophy is not religion. Some people think that philosophy is something that talks about the world outside, world away from this world that we have, that we live in. No, it doesn't refer to that. And some people think that it's no way related to me, so it will not be useful to me. So these are the large misconceptions that we have around us that prompt us to think that philosophy is not useful to our lives at all. But let me explain this, my friends. And this is the background on which I would be further explaining how interpersonal skills will are required for understanding the other, because that's the theme that is given to me. When we look at, for example, unfortunately, we are on a virtual platform. If had it been that we are all sitting in the same hall, then I would have requested some of you to volunteer. Say, if you are a religious person, okay, or if I give this pen to one of you, one of the participants, how do you receive it? You just take it with your hand, right? So, for example, if I give you a religious symbol, which into which you are, okay, then the way you receive it would be different, right? So, why is it so? Because when you act in the world, something that prompts you to act in the world is your belief system. Your belief system tells you that you should act in a particular way in the world. Agreed? If you belong to a religious belief, and if I'm giving something related to that religious belief, then your behavior towards that would be different from the ordinary things, which means your actions in the world are necessarily influenced by your belief system that you have. And this belief system is how is this belief system working? It works as a part of your worldview, which means you as an individual will have a worldview that exists in the mind, which operates in making your belief system work in the world in which you interact with. Okay, so this is a very interesting aspect that happens. And how do you get this worldview? You get this worldview from your childhood onwards. Yeah, somebody is raising hand. Is it to say something, or Yeah, you're free to stop me anywhere if you want to say something. Um, oh, why is it that people are continuously raising their hand?
No,
Okay,
sir, I
let me.
think there is no question.
Okay, okay, fine.
No, sir, you
Let,
please continue. You please continue.
Sure, sure. So I was saying, how is this worldview with which which operates within us? How is this worldview constructed? From our childhood onwards, we are told, we are nurtured, we are explained to learn things in a particular way at home and at society, at educational institutions, and these things are the ones which work in constructing the worldview. And you know what philosophy says? Basically, this whole process that I have explained is important to philosophy. That's what philosophy deals with. Nothing other than that. Okay. We have an interesting branch called metaphysics, which talks about your worldview and your belief system. And these are the ones which are constructed through another branch of philosophy called epistemology. Okay. Theory of knowledge, how you acquire knowledge. Okay. How you acquire knowledge is the one which decides your worldview. For example, friends, let me give a very rude, crude example. Like some people in the modern life may think that cow dung is like nasty shit, right? But some people may not think so. Why is it so? Because their belief system tells them that cow dung is not something that is to be discarded. Okay, something that is useful to them, right? So I'm giving a very crude example to make you understand that your worldview is developed on the basis of the way you look at the things and you're taught to look at the things. Okay, your epistemology is the one which determines your metaphysics, and your metaphysics, which means worldview and belief system, are the ones which make you act in the world in a particular way. Okay, so as I told you, the epistemology, metaphysics, and the way you act in the world is something called ethics. Okay, and the way you start thinking and speaking is something called logic. Okay, so these are the four branches of philosophy which are not away from the individual, which are very much within the individual. Okay, once you understand that, is it that you're able to that's why people say often say this, like, what is your philosophy, what is your philosophy of life? So when they say that, what do they mean? They mean to say that in fact philosophy is not away from you, it is within the self, within the individual. Okay, now where does this concept of skill fall into? It falls into the domain of human action. And whenever we look at human action, as I told you, for example, receiving a religious symbol or taking a pen from my hand, this is all human actions. And me speaking now and you listening to me now, all these are part of human actions. And also a person who is into an organization trying to obey the orders or execute an action plan or complete a task, all these fall under the domain of human action. Whenever we look at the human action, domain of human action, there are at least three things that are very important. One is the agent. The second one is the action that is to be performed. The third one is the consequences of the action. Right? Can you imagine a human action without these three, like agent, action, and consequences? No, you cannot imagine any human action beyond these three. Right? So the first one that is to be focused is the agent. All of us, whoever is acting in that particular situation has to have the knowledge, and it's not just the knowledge, and also the skill that is important. So the components, three components that we find in human action. One is the agent. Okay, agent is very important there because agent is the one who has to have the knowledge and the skill. Okay, the second one is action. Action is also very important equally because that's the one which is leading us to the consequences. If the agent is skillful and knowledgeable and then keeps quiet, it's not going to lead you anywhere. So that's the second one which is important, is action. In the action, you would be thinking, you would be speaking, and you would be doing. All these three fall under the domain of action. Indian tradition talks about manasa, vacha, karmana. How do you act? What are you? You're a human being. How do you act? Thinking, through your thinking, through your speaking, through your doing. Okay, so this is how you become a living agent in the world, and the consequences or other important aspect of this analysis of human action. The consequences necessarily involve the other. Okay. Now I'm trying to explain this in terms of interpersonal skills. When you talk about skill, it necessarily involves the agent, and it also necessarily involves an action, and it necessarily impacts the other. That is how the other becomes a very important component of your own action. You may think that I am acting, why should I care about the other? Because your action necessarily involves your action necessarily involves its impact on the other. So this is a very important aspect. That's how the other comes into your domain of action and influences your action. Right? That is how just being merely knowledgeable or skillful is not enough. By taking other into cognizance, understanding the other becomes a very important part of your own action plan. Right? So that's about understanding human action, domain of human action. And now let me briefly try to explain what I want to say with regard to the intra and interpersonal skills that we in general talk about. Okay, because my the theme that I'm supposed to talk about is interpersonal, but I want to explain in terms of the distinction that we draw between inter and intra, so that we will have a better understanding of it. We are told that inter means between and intra means within, right? Interpersonal means between two individuals. Intrapersonal means within the individual. This is how we are explained, right? And people have also explained as saying that these are like they don't go together. They're opposites. Like intra is within, and inter is outside the individual with the other. So that is how one is internal and another one is external. And we are also explained saying that these are in a way a kind of opposites. Okay, they work there is a clear cut distinction between them. There is a clear cut disjunction between them. This is how these two are explained to us, right? There is an interesting psychologist who by name I think it is Folarin, okay, who says that psychology acknowledges intrapersonal skills. Okay, psychology acknowledges intrapersonal. Well, sociology focuses on interpersonal, intra-group, and intergroup communication. And political science and history identify inter-ethnic, intrastate, and international communications. Okay, so that is how each of the disciplines, social sciences disciplines that we look at, try to play with this inter and intra. Okay, so that's an interesting aspect that I thought I should mention here. And whenever there is a concern, no, intra and inter, we are told that if you have to deal with the interpersonal things, this seems to be something that is different from intrapersonal. This is how it is explained to us. I'm trying to break this concept further. For me, these are not opposites. These are not binaries. You heard about this binary? Binary means world around us. Binary epistemology they call. Okay, this binary epistemology is given to us by the modern Western education system, where they say that the whole world is divided into two binaries, two opposites, and in order to understand one concept, you have to look at the opposite of it and understand the concept as an absence of the opposite. Okay, this is how people have explained as the binary conception. So, for example, if you have to understand what is interpersonal, okay, then you have to identify its opposite, intrapersonal, and then understand one to be the absence of the other. For example, to give a very mundane example, like you have been taught, all of us have been taught antonyms, right? Antonyms means in English like opposites. And what is the opposite of fire? Immediately people will say something like water, right? Or air, right? And if I say what is the opposite of masculinity, then they would say femininity, a boy, a girl, right? This is how we are told, and this is how the world, the people have told us that the world is divided into. But actually, this is all uh, not completely true, my friends. Try to understand this, okay? I'll try to briefly explain that and go into this intra and inter, because that's how they are also related. If you look at Indian tradition, these are not opposites. The world is not made up of opposites. The world is made up of complementary things. Okay, fire and air are not opposites. They are complementary to each other. What do we mean when we say complementary? Something that lacks in one, the other will have, and both of them have to come together to make something new come into existence. For example, Indian tradition tells us that there are five natural elements that we have: Prithvi, Vyapas, Tejo, Vayu, Akashat, earth, water, fire, air, and space. And these are natural elements which are not opposites. These are like complementary to each other. Only when they come together, life comes into existence. Similarly, boy and girl, femininity and masculinity are not never explained in Indian tradition to be opposites to each other. They are explained in terms of complementarity. Okay, one is complemented by the other. Okay, the man and women are complemented with each other, complemented to that's how they have to come together so that something new life comes into existence. Okay, so don't understand this binary conception to be true, which is stated to us. Coming back to this interpersonal skills, unless you have intrapersonal skills, you can never have interpersonal skills. Okay, don't see them to be opposites. For instance, even if you look at Indian tradition, classical Indian in the sense that Upanishadic tradition, it continuously stresses the point that if you want to know the world around you, if you want to know the other who is beyond you, what is required is first you know yourself. Okay, so that is how the first question that you find in many of the Upanishadic texts is know yourself. Koham is the question. Who am I is the question that comes up. And you know your own skills first, you know yourself first, so that this would help you to know the other in a better way. So, in order to understand the other, it is not that the other is to be externally, the other's external behavior, which is to be looked at. Rather, first you have to look at yourself. Okay. See, you think that, yeah, by looking at the other, I can empathize, I can sympathize. These are the terms that have come up in the modern Western English vocabulary: empathetic and sympathetic, etc. Basically, you think that, yeah, by looking at the behavior of the other, you can be empathetic to the other. No, that is not possible. First thing is to explore into yourself, and whether you have to see whether you have this quality of being empathetic to yourself. That's how we say, like, you know who all of us have a best person whom we have met so far in our life, right? A concept of best person, and also the best person whom we have met so far in our life, right? You will have some people may say that their mother is the best person whom they have met, and some people father, friend, or a teacher, whoever it may be. But don't you consider yourself to be the best person in your life? So if that is the case, the question that comes forward is, have you met yourself? Have you ever tried to meet your own self? Did you try to spend some time? See, you tend to think that, no, I want to be empathetic to the other, I would go and spend some time with the other, and that is how I think I become I also become empathetic. That's good, well and good. But first thing that is required is, don't you think you are the best person whom you should meet, right? Because according to you, at least you should be the best person for yourself. And if that is the case, have you met yourself? And this is a very important question to me, because that's what would be the beginning of intrapersonal skills for you. Okay, only if you're empathetic to yourself, you can be empathetic to the other. So intrapersonal skills are the ones which in fact help you in interpersonal skills. Okay, so that is how there is no disjuncture between intrapersonal and interpersonal. In fact, there is a continuity between these two that you have to think of. All of us are supposed to nurture. This is a very important point. Like, we think that skills are only for the external world. No, skills are inter, okay, within the individual. Okay, you are the one who is acting with the skill and knowledge. If that is the case, the first place where you have to make use of the skills is within yourself. Okay, you have to be skillful in dealing with yourself. You have to be skillful and knowledgeable with regard to your own self. Only then you would be able to act in the world outside in a amicable way, in a peaceful coexistential way, in a way in which you can complete the task, in a way in which you can bring people together to complete a task. So that is all would be possible only when you start looking into your own self. So that is a very important departure, and there is a continuity between intra and inter, rather than assuming a kind of discontinuity. And interpersonal will never be possible unless you have intrapersonal skills of dealing with yourself. Okay, so that's how knowing yourself, managing yourself, and putting your thinking, speech, and action in consonance are very important skills that help you in look at others' behavior and try to help them further, and also taking them along with you. So that's the crux of dealing with or understanding the other. Understanding the other would be possible only when you understand yourself in a better way, because the emotion that you want to put in other has to be there within you initially, and you should be able to look at that, which is very important for all of us. So that is how I would try to explain this whole concept of interpersonal skills and understanding the other. And understanding the other, whenever we look at a human being, human beings are essentially knowing beings, and human beings are essentially relational beings. Okay, you cannot stop yourself from knowing things. Even if you think that you want to sit in a room, close everything and sit, close your eyes, when you hear some sound, your mind goes out. It tells you that you should know that, right? What is happening outside. So continuously, we are inquisitive beings and knowing beings. And it is not that we are just inquisitive and knowing beings. We are also essentially relational beings. If at all we are talking about life, no, life doesn't mean just breathing and blood circulation. Life means relating ourselves with the other individuals. So the way you interact with the world around you, the way you interact with the nature around you, the way you interact with the people around you, is what makes your life as it is. If that is the case within this domain of life, where the interaction is an essential characteristic, the other plays a very significant role at every point of time. So how do you understand the other is a very significant aspect. And I'm saying you can only understand the other if you can understand yourself in a better way, right? So this is what is a classical Indian tradition continuously tries to tell us and explain it to us. So there are many other things that I would like to talk, but I think it's already 9:30. I mean, 8 o'clock. So I should stop here, I believe. If there are any questions or anything that you would like to say, I would be happy to respond to them. And I'm really grateful to Praveen Joshi ji for this wonderful opportunity that he has given me today.
Any question from anybody? Sir, in philosophy, there is a concept of Dvaita and Advaita.
Yeah.
So, uh, first understand yourself and then you will understand others. That's what you have said. I mean, intra and inter. You have brought out this issue wonderfully. So, my point is, does the point that you have brought home is related to the philosophy of Advaita?
Okay. Yeah. In fact, true. You got it absolutely right. Advaita is close to what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But let me explain what this Dvaita and Advaita in the larger context of philosophy, Indian philosophical tradition. Basically, this is something that is really fascinating. All of you must know because we are all from India. We have Vedas, and Vedas have Upanishads as the last concluding portions of the Vedas. And these Upanishadic texts are 108 or more than that, but principal Upanishads are 10. And among them, there are 4 or 5 Mahavakyas, which means the sentences with immense potentiality of understanding, Mahavakyas. And these Mahavakyas are interpreted by 3 different acharyas from India in 3 different ways. Okay. One, for example, the statement like Aham Brahmasmi. All of you might have heard this term, this sentence, Aham Brahmasmi, right? It's considered to be one of the Upanishadic Mahavakyas. And the same sentence is interpreted by Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya, to be saying that the whole universe, everything, the reality is only one. And there is another Acharya, Madhvacharya, who argues that no, there are 2 things, 2 realities, the self and the reality around you. So there are 2 realities. One is the self, and the other one is the other, the Brahman or Paramatma or God, whoever it may be. And then there is another Acharya, Ramanujacharya, who argues that no, in fact, self and the reality, the other reality, God, both of them are related to each other in the form of body and soul. Okay, so this is how it is explained. So basically, when they were trying to deal with what is happening here is Adi Shankaracharya tries to explain in terms of Advaita Vedanta that ultimate reality is only one, unless by knowing yourself you will understand the ultimate reality, who is a Brahman or whoever it may be. Okay, so you can only know the ultimate reality by knowing yourself. So you can reach out to the other only if you know yourself. So your knowledge of your strengths and your weaknesses is very much required so that your interpersonal skills can help you in understanding the other. So that
Wow.
is how intrapersonal skills are the ones which work like foundation in understanding the other, in extending them to interpersonal and then understanding the other. So this is the philosophy of life according to Indian tradition.
Exactly.
West may tell you that these are opposites, but India never says these are opposites. These are like continuation from one another.
Exactly. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Nicely explained.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Over to the anchor, Tapsha.
Yes, sir. Shivani
Please.
ma'am,
Yes, ma'am.
proceed further.
Yes, ma'am. What a wonderful session it was. Thank you so much, sir, for such an enriching and very informative session. I'm sure that your talk will immensely beneficial for each one of us. It was really a mesmerizing session. Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable time. After this session, wonderful session, it's time to thank our eminent speaker and participants. So for that, I would like to invite Ms. Pooja Devkar ma'am to propose vote of thanks. So friends, I, Shivani Misawat, take your leave and over to you, Ms. Pooja Devkar ma'am. Thank you, sir. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Pooja, Pooja, your voice is not audible.
Thank you, Shivani. Thank you. Today, privileged to have the vote of thanks on this memorable session. I, Pooja Devkar, on behalf of Prerna College, welcomes you all. First of all, I thank our honorable keynote speaker, Bala Ganpati Devakunda sir. In his busy schedule, he has found time to grace this function and address us on a vital topic with his very important views. It was wonderful experience listening to him on this occasion. Sir, I'm sure that our students get an immense knowledge from your talk as you explained very well what interpersonal relationship, how to understanding others. You throw light on skillfulness in thought, ideas, philosophy, what interpersonal and intrapersonal skills are. Now, so much, sir. Now, I extend my sincere thanks to our management of Prerna Seva Mandal. I thank them for their kindness, interest, and their continued support. My hearty thank to our respected director, Sir Dr. Praveen Joshi, Prerna College, for his continuous motivation, support, vision, and commitment. I must thank our deep sense of appreciation to our coordinator and in charge of the program for their continuous guidance. I would like to thank the technical department who worked hard to ensure this session becomes successful. At last, I thank all participants for making this session a successful one. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, my
Thank
sincere thanks to all of you for your patience. And Praveen ji, thank you so much for this wonderful invitation, sir. Thank you so much.
you. Happen to come to
Enjoy.
India, please call.
Sure, sure. Definitely, we'll be in touch. And
Yeah.
I look forward to further interactions and collaborations. Thank you. Thank you so
Right, sir.
much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
sir.
so much, sir.
Here this session is over. You can leave now. Thank you all.